On my 70th birthday, a toast was raised by my daughter-in-law, not to my life, but to the old lady going to the nursing home. She declared I would soon be just a memory. Laughter filled the room, the sound echoing the painful realization that what I'd anticipated as a celebration felt more like my own eulogy, witnessed while still alive. Just 3 days later, on Monday, I liquidated my entire $8 million estate and embarked on a cruise. I'm truly glad you're here to follow my story to its conclusion. Please, share the city you're watching from in the comments. I'd love to see how far my journey resonates. I never imagined turning 70 would feel like this. Not a joyous milestone, but a somber preview of my absence. The restaurant, I must admit, was exquisite. My son, Michael, had reserved a private room at Laameon, an upscale French establishment downtown. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above, casting a warm, inviting glow over the crisp, white linen tablecloths. A birthday cake, adorned with delicate sugar flowers, sat patiently on a side table. Every detail seemed meticulously arranged, outwardly perfect. Yet, I should have known better. I had spent the entire afternoon meticulously preparing, slipping into my beloved navy blue dress, the one my late husband, Thomas, had always adored. "You look regal in that color, Vi," he used to say. I completed my ensemble with the pearl necklace he'd given me on our 40th anniversary and styled my silver hair into soft, elegant waves. I wanted to look my absolute best. After all, 70 truly was a significant milestone. Upon my arrival, Michael greeted me with a kiss on the cheek, his expensive cologne almost overpowering. "Happy birthday, Mom," he murmured, but his eyes were already scanning the room, his attention drawn to his phone. My grandson, Tyler, a 16-year-old perpetually tethered to his smartphone, mumbled a greeting without bothering to lift his gaze. But it was Yara, my daughter-in-law, who truly commanded the space. Dressed in a striking red designer gown, adorned with glittering jewelry, she gave me an air kiss, careful not to smudge her perfectly applied lipstick. "Viola, darling, you made it," she chirped, as if I might have forgotten my own birthday dinner. For years, I had genuinely strived to embrace Yara as a daughter. When Michael first introduced her to us 15 years ago, I welcomed her into our family with open arms. I patiently taught her my cherished family recipes, shared intimate stories about Thomas, and invited her wholeheartedly into our traditions. As a wedding present, I even provided them with the down payment for their house, but it seemed that for Yara, nothing was ever truly enough. The dinner unfolded with a string of superficial conversations. Michael spoke at length about his latest promotion. Yara boasted about her new position on a charity committee. And Tyler, predictably, complained about needing a new car. Not once did anyone inquire about my life, my weekly painting class, or the community garden I had helped establish. Then came the champagne toast. Yara rose, glass held high, her presence drawing every eye in the room. "I'd like to make a toast," she announced, her voice resonating clearly. "To Viola on her 70th birthday." A genuine smile touched my lips, feeling a flicker of warmth, believing for a moment this was a sincere gesture. "To the old lady who will soon be in a nursing home," she continued, her smile never wavering, a chilling contrast to her words. "Soon, you'll just be a memory to us all." The room erupted in laughter. Michael chuckled, shaking his head as if his wife had delivered the cleverest of jokes. Tyler snickered, finally looking up from his phone for the first time that entire evening. Even the waiter, standing discreetly by the wall, had to suppress a smile. I sat there, utterly stunned. Frozen, my champagne glass halfway to my lips. The words Yara had spoken hung in the air like a noxious poison. Come on, Viola. It's just a joke, Yara quickly said, noticing my expression. Don't be so sensitive. We all know how independent you are. The way she uttered the word independent made it sound less like a trait and more like a debilitating disease. I forced a brittle smile, and raising my glass, took a small sip. The champagne tasted undeniably bitter. Speech, Mom, Michael called out from across the table. Your turn for a toast. I pushed myself to my feet slowly, my legs feeling suddenly, unnervingly weak. What could I possibly say? How could I articulate that their casual cruelty had finally shattered the armor I'd meticulously built over years of subtle put-downs and dismissals? How could I tell them that in that precise moment, I had realized none of them truly saw me as a person with feelings, dreams, and inherent dignity? Thank you all for coming, I managed to say instead, my voice steadier than I felt. It's a blessing to reach 70 surrounded by family. The lie tasted even worse than the champagne. The remainder of the evening passed in an indistinct blur. I offered smiles when expected, swallowed cake I couldn't taste, and unboxed presents I knew, without a doubt, had been hastily purchased by Michael's assistant. All the while, Yara's chilling toast, and the subsequent peals of laughter, replayed relentlessly in my mind. When Michael dropped me off at my house, the beautiful colonial home I had shared with Thomas for 40 years, paid off by his life insurance after he passed, he leaned in and kissed my cheek again. Great dinner, Mom. See you at Sunday lunch. I nodded automatically, already picturing the scene, another Sunday lunch where I would cook for everyone, while Yara critiqued my decor and Michael remained glued to his emails. Once inside, I locked the door and finally allowed the tears to come. They were the first tears I had shed since Thomas's funeral 5 years ago. Not delicate, dignified tears, but raw, painful sobs that left me gasping for air. I wept for the years I had wasted trying to please a family who saw me as nothing more than a convenience, an ATM, a free babysitter, a convenient punchline. I wept for Thomas, who would have been absolutely furious had he heard Yara's cruel toast. And ultimately, I wept for myself, for enduring such treatment for far too long. When the deluge of tears finally subsided, I walked to my bedroom and confronted my reflection in the mirror. My makeup was streaked and ruined, my eyes puffy and red, but something else was subtly different. There was a newfound clarity in my gaze that hadn't been there before. Enough, I whispered to my reflection. Enough. That night, as I lay in bed, sleep proving elusive, I made a profound decision. My life was not over. In fact, it was just beginning, and from this moment forward, it would be lived entirely on my terms. The very next morning, I called my bank to schedule an appointment. Then, I contacted my lawyer. Finally, with a sense of burgeoning excitement, I pulled out the well-worn travel brochure for the Mediterranean cruise I'd been secretly dreaming about since Thomas died. For the first time in years, I felt something akin to hope, a liberating sense of freedom. They believed I was simply a memory waiting to happen. I would soon show them just how wrong they were. Monday morning dawned with a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. The searing humiliation of my birthday dinner had crystallized into something unyielding, a hard-won determination. I dressed meticulously in my best pantsuit, the one I'd worn to Thomas's funeral and hadn't touched since. Today felt different, equally momentous. My first stop was Hamilton Trust Bank, where manager Jim Peterson, who had known Thomas and me for over 30 years, greeted me. His eyebrows shot up in surprise when I informed him of my intentions. "That's a substantial liquidation, Viola," he said, leaning forward across his desk. "Are you sure about this?" These investments have been performing well. I'm certain, Jim, I replied, my voice steady, betraying no hint of my inner turmoil. I'd like to close all accounts except my checking account, which I'll keep open with $10,000. He removed his glasses, polishing them nervously. May I ask why? Is everything all right? I thought about Yara's cruel toast, about the laughter that had followed, about 5 years of Sunday lunches where my opinions were routinely dismissed, where I was treated like an obligation rather than a cherished family member. Everything is finally going to be all right, I replied. Jim nodded slowly. It will take a few days to liquidate everything properly. The CDs will have some penalties for early withdrawal. I understand. I'll pay the penalties. 2 hours later, I left with the necessary paperwork initiated. $8 million, the culmination of Thomas's life insurance, our joint investments, and the sale of our manufacturing business when he fell ill, would soon be entirely under my control. My next destination was Gerald Webb's law office. Jerry had been Thomas's college roommate and our family lawyer for decades. His secretary, Martha, embraced me warmly when I arrived. Viola, so good to see you. How was the birthday? Illuminating, I said simply. Jerry welcomed me with a firm, warm handshake. At 75, he remained as sharp as ever, his bow tie as perfectly centered as always. What can I do for you today? He asked, once we were seated comfortably in his office. I need to change my will, Jerry. His expression remained neutral. I see. Any particular reason? I took a deep breath. I'm liquidating my assets and making some significant life changes. Michael and his family will no longer be my primary beneficiaries. For a moment, a heavy silence hung between us. Then Jerry leaned back in his chair. Viola, we've known each other a long time. This seems sudden. It isn't, I said, surprised by the unwavering steadiness in my voice. It's been coming for 5 years, ever since Thomas died, perhaps even longer. I proceeded to recount the details of the birthday dinner, Yara's biting toast, and the years of subtle disrespect that had accumulated. As I spoke, his expression visibly darkened. Thomas would be livid, he said finally. Yes, he would. I offered a sad smile. But Thomas isn't here. I am, and I'm finally taking control of what's left of my life. When I left Jerry's office, the afternoon sun was warm and comforting on my face. I walked to the small cafe on the corner, the very one where Thomas and I used to enjoy Sunday brunch. I ordered a cappuccino and settled into a window seat, watching the passers-by. For the first time in years, I found myself breathing deeply, freely. My phone buzzed. It was Michael. I let it go straight to voicemail. A text message followed almost immediately. Mom, don't forget Tyler needs a ride to practice today. Yara has her charity luncheon. I stared at the message. No, please. No. There was no inquiry about how I was feeling after my birthday, just another demand, thinly disguised. As a reminder, 5 years of this. 5 years of being their on-call chauffeur, their personal cook, their convenient ATM, and their occasional babysitter. All while being treated as nothing more than an inconvenience. 5 years of watching Michael transform, becoming more and more like Yara. Entitled, dismissive, materialistic. I put my phone away without responding. Another text chimed, then another. I ignored them all. Instead, I opened my tablet and navigated directly to the Mediterranean cruise I had been eyeing. 15 days sailing from Barcelona to Athens, with enticing stops in France, Italy, and the Greek islands. I had dreamed of seeing the Mediterranean since I was a little girl, but Thomas's health had always been too fragile for such an extensive trip. My finger hovered over the Book Now button. Was I truly going to do this? Leave everything behind? The house where I'd raised my son? the community I'd been an active part of for decades. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a voicemail from Yara. Viola, Michael said you're not answering. We really need you to get Tyler today. I can't miss this luncheon. It's for charity, you know. Call me back immediately. Her imperious tone solidified my decision. I clicked Book Now and proceeded through the reservation process, selecting a balcony suite, single occupancy. When the confirmation email landed in my inbox, I felt a strange, exhilarating mix of terror and triumph. I had never traveled alone before. I had never made such a monumental decision without consulting someone else first. My parents, then Thomas, then Michael. On my way home, I made a stop at Barnes & Noble. I emerged with 3 comprehensive travel guides to the Mediterranean, a crisp new journal, and a book optimistically titled Solo Travel After 60 Wouds. The young cashier smiled at me. Planning a big trip? She asked. The biggest, I replied, returning her smile, a genuine one this time. At home, I brewed myself a comforting cup of tea and settled into Thomas's old armchair. We had purchased it the year Michael was born, and Thomas had spent countless evenings in it, reading to our son while I watched from the doorway, my heart overflowing. Am I doing the right thing, Tom? I whispered to the empty room. As if in answer, my gaze fell upon a framed photograph on the mantelpiece. It was Thomas and me on our 40th anniversary, his arm around my waist, both of us caught in a moment of genuine laughter. We had renewed our vows that day, promising once again to cherish each other until death parted us. But we had never imagined the kind of death that was slowly consuming our family, the gradual erosion of respect, the creeping disappearance of love until all that remained was obligation and cold convenience. The phone rang again. It was Michael. This time I answered. Mom, where have you been? Tyler needs... I can't today, Michael, I interrupted, my voice firm. I'm busy. Silence stretched on the other end of the line. I had never refused him before. Busy? He finally managed, his voice laced with disbelief. With what? My life, I said simply, and then, without another word, I hung up. I pulled out my new journal and began to meticulously plan the rest of my life, a life that, for the first time in decades, would be entirely my own. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparations. I sold my car to a young couple expecting their first child. I hired a reliable property manager to handle the beautiful colonial house. Sale of my house, the beautiful colonial that had been my home for 40 years. I donated most of my clothes to the women's shelter downtown, keeping only what I would need for the cruise and whatever life awaited me afterward. Each action felt both terrifying and liberating, like cutting away anchors I hadn't realized were holding me down. Michael called repeatedly. I answered only once, telling him I was making some changes, but offering no details. His reaction was predictable. Confusion, then irritation, then demands for explanations I wasn't ready to give. Mom, you're not making sense, he'd said, his voice sharp with impatience. What changes? Why now? I'll explain everything when I'm ready, I replied. For now, I need some space. Space? He sounded genuinely bewildered. From what? I almost laughed. From being taken for granted. From being the convenient solution to everyone's problems while my own needs were ignored. From the slow suffocation of living as an afterthought in my own family. But I simply said, I'll be in touch. And ended the call. The morning of my departure arrived crisp and clear. My suitcases, brand new, purchased specifically for this journey, waited by the door. My passport, updated after Thomas died but never used, sat nestled in my purse alongside my wallet, which now contained a significant amount of cash and a new credit card linked to my personal account. I took one last, lingering walk through the house, my fingers trailing over familiar surfaces, silently bidding farewell to the home where I'd raised my son, loved my husband, and eventually, gradually, lost myself. In the master bedroom, I paused at Thomas's side of the bed, still preserved as if he might return at any moment. "I hope you understand," I whispered to his memory. "I need to find myself again." The taxi arrived at 9 a.m. sharp. As we pulled away from the curb, I didn't look back. At the airport, I checked my luggage with hands that trembled ever so slightly. I was truly doing this, flying to Barcelona alone at 70 years old to board a cruise ship bound for adventure. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. While waiting at the gate, my phone buzzed with a text from Yara. "Viola, Michael says you're acting strange. Remember, we need you for Sunday lunch. Tyler has a game after." I turned off my phone without responding. The flight to Barcelona was long, yet surprisingly pleasant. I watched 2 movies, ate the airline meal without complaint, and even managed to sleep for a few hours. When we began our descent over the Mediterranean coast, the sight of the sun glinting off the azure water brought tears to my eyes. I was here. I had made it. The cruise terminal was a bustling hive of activity. I followed the signs for the celestial voyager, my heart beating faster with each step. The ship was magnificent, gleaming white against the brilliant blue sky, its flags fluttering in the gentle breeze. I joined the check-in line, clutching my documents tightly. "First cruise?" asked the woman behind me, her American accent comfortingly familiar. I turned to see a slender woman, about my own age, with kind eyes. Age, with short silver hair and bright blue eyes. Her smile was warm and knowing. "Is it that obvious?" I asked, returning her smile. "You have that look of terrified excitement," she said with a laugh. "I remember it well from my first solo trip." "Solo trip?" I repeated, testing the phrase on my tongue. "Yes, I suppose that's what this is." "I'm Agatha," she said, extending her hand. "Agatha Reynolds." "Viola Harrington," I replied, shaking her hand. "Pleased to meet you." "Well, Viola Harrington," she said, her eyes twinkling. "How about we have dinner together tonight? First nights can be intimidating when you're alone." I hesitated only briefly before nodding. I'd like that very much. After check-in, I found my stateroom on deck 8. The balcony suite was even more luxurious than I had imagined. A queen-sized bed with fine linens, a comfortable sitting area with a small sofa, and a private balcony overlooking the sparkling sea. I unpacked methodically, hanging my new clothes in the spacious closet and arranging my toiletries in the pristine bathroom. As I worked, my phone buzzed from the depths of my purse. I had turned it back on after landing, out of some lingering, ingrained sense of responsibility. Now, I retrieved it to find 6 missed calls and a dozen texts, all from either Michael or Yara. The latest was from Michael. "Mom, where are you? The house is empty and your car is gone. Call me immediately." I sat on the edge of the bed, phone still in hand. They had gone to the house, likely expecting to find me there, ready to drive Tyler to his game or prepare Sunday lunch. Instead, they had found emptiness. Now, they were panicking, not out of genuine concern for my well-being, but because their carefully arranged lives had been abruptly disrupted. A sharp pang of guilt shot through me. Was I being selfish, abandoning my family without a full explanation? What kind of mother does that? But then, I remembered Yara's toast, the cruel laughter that had followed, and the years of being taken for granted. I recalled Michael's impatient tone whenever I dared to express a need or desire of my own, and I remembered how they had already dismissed me, relegating me to a nursing home, soon to be just a memory. With steady fingers, I typed a brief message. I'm safe. Taking some time for myself. We'll be in touch when I'm ready. I hesitated, then added, please respect my need for space. Then, I silenced the phone and placed it carefully in the room safe. I wouldn't turn it off completely. That felt too final, too dramatic. But I wouldn't allow it to intrude on this vital journey either. A soft knock at my door startled me. I opened it to find Agatha, now dressed in elegant white linen pants and a vibrant turquoise blouse. Ready for the sail-away party? She asked, her enthusiasm utterly infectious. There's champagne on the top deck, and we get to watch Barcelona disappear as we head out to sea. I smoothed my hands over my own outfit, a new pale blue dress I'd bought specifically for this trip. Ready? I said, feeling the profound truth of it settle deep into my bones. As the ship slowly pulled away from the dock, I stood at the railing beside Agatha, champagne flute in hand. The Barcelona skyline steadily receded, its lights beginning to twinkle. Famous Sagrada Familia visible, though distant. Fellow passengers cheered and snapped photos, but I simply breathed in the cool sea air and felt the gentle vibration of the ship beneath my feet. To new beginnings? Agatha said, raising her glass. To new beginnings, I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. The shore grew smaller, then disappeared altogether, leaving nothing but the endless blue horizon. And for the first time in years, I felt the immense weight of expectations lift from my shoulders. I was free. By the 5th day of the cruise, I had settled into a rhythm that felt both novel and strangely natural. Each morning, I woke early to watch the sunrise from my balcony, wrapped in the plush robe provided by the cruise line. I'd have coffee delivered to my room, then join Agatha for breakfast in the main dining room. Agatha Reynolds had become my unexpected guide in this new world of independence. A widow for 12 years, she had transformed her grief into a vibrant passion for exploration. After her husband's death, she'd sold their large suburban home, invested wisely, and now spent half the year traveling. The hardest part, she told me over breakfast as we sailed toward Naples, was convincing my children that I wasn't having a breakdown. They thought grief had made me irrational. I laughed, recognizing the familiar concern often disguised as control. What changed their minds? Time, she said, buttering her toast with precision. And the realization that I wasn't asking their permission. I was simply informing them of my decisions. After breakfast, I'd attend an art class or a lecture, then enjoy lunch, followed by exhilarating exploration whenever we docked at a new port. In the evenings, Agatha and I would dress for dinner, sharing a table with other fascinating passengers who gradually became friends. A retired professor from Boston, a widowed doctor from Chicago, a couple celebrating their 50th anniversary. For the first time in decades, I was known only as myself, not as Thomas's wife, Michael's mother, or Tyler's grandmother. Just Viola, a woman with her own interests, opinions, and stories to tell. And I was blossoming. In Marseille, I unexpectedly discovered a passion for photography, capturing the vibrant colors of the old port with the new camera I'd purchased in Barcelona. In Rome, I stood before Michelangelo's Pieta, tears streaming down my face, moved beyond words by its ethereal beauty. You're changing, Agatha observed as we shared a bottle of wine on my balcony that evening, the distant lights of the Italian coast twinkling. I can see it happening day by day. Is that strange? I asked, swirling the ruby liquid in my glass. To change so much at 70? She laughed, a rich, resonant sound that carried effortlessly on the sea breeze. What's strange is thinking we ever stop changing. Life is constant transformation, Viola. The tragedy is when we let others freeze us in place. I thought of Michael and Yara, of how they had gradually reduced me to a single dimension, a convenient resource, always available, never truly seen. Inconvenient. How had I allowed that to happen? The answer came with surprising clarity. I had confused love with usefulness. Somewhere along the way, I'd begun to measure my worth by how much my family needed me, not by how much they truly respected me. The next morning, as we docked in Naples, I checked my phone for the first time in days. 27 missed calls, dozens of increasingly frantic texts. "Mom, where are you? This isn't funny anymore. We've called the police. They're treating this as a missing person case. Please, just let us know you're alive." The last message, sent just hours ago, was different. "Mom, it's Michael. I found the letter from the cruise line. Why didn't you tell us? Why did you just disappear?" So, they'd finally discovered my destination. The property manager must have forwarded my mail. A heavy weight settled in my stomach. I hadn't meant to cause such alarm. Despite everything, I didn't want Michael to think I was in danger. But I also wasn't ready for the inevitable interrogation that would follow if I called. After careful consideration, I sent a brief email. "Michael, I am safe and well on my Mediterranean cruise. I needed time to myself after years of putting everyone else first. I'm sorry for worrying you, but please understand that this journey is important to me. I will contact you when I return to the States. Until then, I ask that you respect my privacy. Love, Mom." I hit send, then turned off my phone again. Naples awaited with its narrow streets and centuries of history. I wouldn't let guilt overshadow this precious day. That afternoon, as Agatha and I explored the ruins of Pompeii, I found myself drawn to the plaster casts of the city's final victims. Men, women, and children, frozen in their last moments when Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD. Their forms were haunting, yet strangely beautiful in their shared humanity. "They had no warning," our guide explained. "No time to escape." I stared at the figure of a woman, her arms raised as if to protect herself from the inevitable. How many warnings had I ignored in my own life? How many times had I felt the subtle tremors of discontent, only to convince myself that the eruption would never truly come? "You're thinking about your family," Agatha said quietly as we walked back to the ship. I nodded, surprised by her perception. "I keep wondering if I did the right thing, leaving so abruptly without explanation." "Would they have listened if you'd tried to explain?" she asked. The question hung between us, unanswerable yet revealing. No, they wouldn't have listened. They would have dismissed my feelings, labeled me oversensitive or dramatic. They would have made promises they had no intention of keeping, all to restore the comfortable, convenient status quo. That evening, as the ship sailed toward Greece, I received an unexpected call on my stateroom phone. My heart raced, thinking it might be the ship's staff relaying an emergency message from home. But it was the cruise director, calling to ask if I would consider sharing some of my newfound passion. Photographs in the ship's art gallery. Another passenger had seen me taking pictures in port and mentioned my remarkable eye for composition to the staff. "Me?" I asked, genuinely shocked. "But I'm just an amateur." "Sometimes the freshest perspectives come from those who haven't been taught the rules," he replied with a knowing smile. 2 days later, 5 of my photographs, printed and framed by the ship's photography center, hung proudly in the gallery alongside works by professional artists. My name on the little placards beside them looked strange, almost like it belonged to someone else. Viola Harrington, United States. As I stood in the gallery during the exhibition opening, a glass of champagne in hand, passengers I'd never met approached to compliment my work. They asked about my techniques, my inspiration, my background as a photographer. I just started, actually, I admitted to a charming couple from Australia. This cruise is my first real adventure with a camera? You've got a natural talent, the woman said warmly. The way you capture light is quite special. Later, the ship's professional photographer approached me with an astonishing offer: to buy 2 of my prints for the permanent collection displayed in the main dining room. I was so stunned that Agatha had to gently nudge me to respond. That night, back in my stateroom, I sat on the balcony, watching the moon's reflection dance on the gentle waves. A warm Mediterranean breeze caressed my skin as I contemplated the day's events. Who was this woman who took photographs worthy of exhibition? Who accepted compliments without deflection? Who navigated foreign cities with confidence and dined with strangers who quickly became friends? She was me. I realized she had always been me, buried beneath layers of obligation and expectation. And now, like a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis, I was finally spreading my wings. My phone sat on the bedside table, still turned off. Michael and his family felt distant now, as if they existed in another life. One I had carefully packed away, like winter clothes in summer. Tomorrow, we would arrive in Santorini. I had already decided to take a watercolor class offered on the island, eager to try my hand at capturing the famous blue domes and whitewashed buildings in a new medium. I was no longer just existing. I was living, discovering, becoming. And I had no intention of going back to the woman I was before. Chapter 5: The Return on Her Own Terms. The Mediterranean cruise that was initially planned for 15 days stretched into 30, then 45. When we finally reached Athens, the original final destination on the itinerary, Agatha convinced me to join her on the ship's continuing journey to Istanbul and the Black Sea. "Why rush back?" she asked, as we sipped ouzo in a small taverna overlooking the Acropolis. "What's waiting for you that can't wait a little longer?" I couldn't think of a single reason to say no. Those extra weeks were a precious gift I gave myself without a trace of guilt. I explored ancient ruins in Ephesus, wandered through the vibrant chaos of the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul, and watched the sun rise over the shimmering waters of the Bosphorus, over the Black Sea from the ship's deck. I continued taking photographs, now with growing confidence, and even sold 3 prints to fellow passengers. But eventually, the extended journey came to an end. As the ship docked in Barcelona once more, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and resolve. I wasn't the same woman who had boarded this ship nearly 2 months ago. "What will you do now?" Agatha asked as we exchanged contact information. She was continuing on to a photography retreat in Provence, an invitation she'd extended to me as well. "I need to go home," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "Not to stay, but to settle things properly." She nodded, understanding what I couldn't fully articulate. Running away had been necessary, a radical act of self-preservation. But true freedom would come only when I could face my family on my own terms, without fear or guilt. The flight back to the States gave me ample time to prepare. I reviewed my finances on my tablet. The proceeds from the house sale had been finalized while I was at sea, adding significantly to my already considerable nest egg. I had already purchased a small condominium in a vibrant downtown area, sight unseen except for virtual tours. It was modern, manageable, and most importantly, entirely mine. When I turned on my phone after landing, it exploded with notifications. I scrolled through them quickly, noting the progression from anger to concern to a strange, sullen acceptance in Michael's messages. The most recent, sent just 2 days ago, was uncharacteristically reflective. Mom, I don't understand why you left the way you did, but I hope you're finding whatever you're looking for. We miss you. Tyler keeps asking about you. Please come home. Home. The word rang hollow now. My house was sold. My possessions either stored or donated. Home was no longer a physical place, but a feeling. The feeling of being true to myself. I checked into a hotel rather than calling Michael immediately. I needed one more night of independence. One more morning of waking up, answering to no one but myself. The next day, I rented a car and drove to Michael and Yara's sprawling suburban house. The familiar route felt strange now, as if I were navigating someone else's memory. When I pulled into their driveway, I sat for a moment, gathering my courage. The door opened before I could even knock. Michael stood there, his expression a complex mixture of relief and weariness. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking slightly, "you're back." "I'm back," I confirmed, stepping inside when he moved aside. The house was exactly as I remembered it, tastefully decorated in the neutral tones Yara preferred. Immaculate to the point of feeling unlived in. Tyler sat at the kitchen counter, his eyes widening when he saw me. "Grandma!" he exclaimed, showing more genuine enthusiasm than he had in years. "You look different," he added. I smiled, touching my hair, now styled in a shorter, more modern cut than the conservative style I'd worn for decades. My clothes, too, were different. A coral blouse and white pants purchased in Santorini, complemented by a turquoise necklace made by an artisan in Istanbul. "Where's Yara?" I asked, noticing her absence. "Pilates," Michael replied, studying me as if I were a complex puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "She'll be back soon." "Mom, what happened? Why did you just disappear like that?" I set my purse down and took a seat at the kitchen island. "I needed to find myself again." He frowned. "Find yourself? Mom, you're 70, not 17. The old me would have flinched at his dismissive tone. The new me simply smiled. "That's exactly the problem, Michael. Somehow, we've all bought into the idea that after a certain age, women should just fade, become convenient, stop having dreams or needs of our own." Tyler surprisingly nodded. "Like in that toast at your birthday. That was cold." Michael had the grace to look uncomfortable. "That was just Yara's sense of humor. She didn't mean anything by it." "She meant exactly what she said," I replied calmly. "And so did all of you when you laughed." The front door opened, and Yara's voice called out, "Michael, whose car is in the driveway?" She appeared in the kitchen doorway, yoga mat tucked under her arm, her expression freezing when she saw me. "Viola," she said, recovering quickly. "You're back from your adventure." The way she said adventure made it sound like a childish escapade, something embarrassing and best forgotten. 6 months ago, I would have accepted that framing, eager to smooth things over and reclaim my place in the family. Not anymore. "I'm back," I confirmed. "But not staying." Michael's head snapped up. "What do you mean?" "I've sold the house," I said. "I've bought a condominium downtown. I'm moving in next week." "Downtown?" Yara echoed, a gasp escaping her lips. "But that's so far from us. How will you help with Tyler's schedule or Sunday lunches?" There it was. The blatant assumption that my primary value lay in my usefulness to them. Not my company, not my wisdom, not my love, just my availability. "I won't be driving Tyler anymore," I said gently. "And I won't be hosting Sunday lunches. I'll be happy to meet you at restaurants, though, perhaps once a month." Michael stared as if I'd suddenly started speaking in tongues. "Mom, what are you saying? What about family? What about us?" "I'm saying I love you," I replied, meaning it despite everything. "But I also love myself now, and I won't go back to being treated like a convenience rather than a person. This is ridiculous, Yara snapped, her composure finally cracking. You can't just change the rules after all this time. We depend on you. That's the problem, I said, meeting her gaze steadily. You depend on me, but you don't respect me. The silence that followed was heavy with truth. Tyler, showing wisdom beyond his 16 years, finally broke it. Grandma's right, he said quietly. We've been taking her for granted. Yara shot him a look that would have withered flowers. Michael just looked lost, like a man who had woken up to find the ground beneath his feet had shifted overnight. I'm not cutting you out of my life, I assured them, my voice softening. I'm just changing the terms of my participation. I want a relationship based on mutual respect, not obligation. And if we don't agree to your terms? Yara challenged, her voice sharp. I picked up my purse and stood, feeling strangely peaceful despite the tension crackling in the air. Then that will be your choice, I said, just as this is mine. I left them sitting in their perfect kitchen, surrounded by all the trappings of the life they thought I should want to serve. As I drove away, I felt not regret, but profound resolution. The woman who had allowed herself to be diminished was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, clearer, and finally, genuinely free. 1 year passed more quickly than I could have imagined. My downtown condominium became a true home, filled with photographs from my travels and vibrant artwork purchased from local galleries. I enrolled in photography classes at the community college, joined a lively book club, and volunteered teaching English to new immigrants. All things I'd wanted to do for years, but had set aside for family obligations. I met with Michael and Tyler for dinner once a month, sometimes with Yara, sometimes without. Our relationship remained strained, but civil. Michael struggled to understand my transformation, vacillating between grudging respect and frustrated incomprehension. Tyler, surprisingly, became my strongest ally, often visiting me downtown to escape the suffocating perfection of his parents' home. I like it here, he told me one afternoon as we sat on my balcony overlooking the city park. It feels real. Yara remained coldly polite on the rare occasions we met, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. I knew she viewed my change as a personal betrayal, a rejection of the careful hierarchy she had established with herself at the top. As my 71st birthday approached, I decided to host a small celebration in my new home, not out of obligation, but because I wanted to mark the occasion surrounded by the authentic connections I'd cultivated over the past year. You should invite Michael and his family, Agatha suggested during our weekly video call. After returning from Europe, she had moved to Santa Fe to pursue her photography, but we remained close friends. Even Yara? I asked, only half joking. Especially Yara, Agatha replied. Show her what grace looks like. So, I sent the invitations, one to Michael, Yara, and Tyler, and others to my new friends, my photography instructor Sandra, my neighbors David and Ruth, and several members of my book club. The day of the party arrived warm and clear. I prepared simple but elegant hors d'oeuvres, set out wine and sparkling water, and arranged fresh flowers in the vases I'd brought back from Greece. My home looked beautiful, a true reflection of the woman I had become. Sandra and the book club members arrived first, bearing gifts and warm hugs. David and Ruth followed with a bottle of champagne. We were chatting comfortably when the doorbell rang again. Michael, Yara, and Tyler stood on my doorstep. Stood there. Tyler beside him. No Yara. Happy birthday, Mom, Michael said, kissing my cheek. Yara sends her regrets. She has a charity committee meeting. The old me would have been hurt by her absence. The new me simply nodded, unsurprised. Come in. There are people I'd like you to meet. As I introduced my son and grandson to my friends, I watched Michael's face carefully. He seemed genuinely shocked by this glimpse into my new life. These interesting, accomplished people who valued my company, who knew me as Viola the photographer, Viola the avid reader, Viola the traveler, not as Michael's mother or Tyler's grandmother, but simply as myself. Tyler integrated easily, engaging David in a conversation about architecture, his newest interest. Michael, however, lingered at the edges, a stranger in this vibrant world I had created without him. After everyone had arrived, Sandra called for attention. "I have an announcement," she said, smiling at me. "Our very own Viola has been selected for the Community Art Center's Emerging Photographers exhibition next month. 3 of her Mediterranean series will be featured." My friends applauded enthusiastically. Michael's eyebrows shot up in genuine surprise. "You're a photographer now?" he asked when the conversation had resumed around us. "I'm many things," I replied. "Photography is just one of them." He studied me with new eyes. "You've really changed, Mom." "I've really become myself," I corrected gently. The evening progressed pleasantly. We shared stories, laughed, and eventually gathered around the dining table for cake. As Sandra brought it out, a beautiful confection from my favorite local bakery, I noticed Michael checking his phone repeatedly. "Everything okay?" I asked. He hesitated. "Yara wants to know when we'll be home." She'd finished her meeting early. Ah, there it was. The summons. The expectation that he would drop everything at her convenience. How familiar it felt, watching it from the outside. "Why don't you invite her to join us?" I suggested, surprising myself with my own sincerity. "There's plenty of cake." Michael looked doubtful, but sent the text. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang again. Yara stood there, impeccably dressed as always, a small gift bag dangling from her fingers. "Happy birthday, Viola," she said, her smile practiced. "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," I replied, ushering her in. "We're just about to have cake." As we gathered around the table, my friends raising their glasses in birthday toasts, both heartfelt and humorous, I watched Yara taking in the scene. Her eyes darted from the tasteful decor to my relaxed, happy guests, lingering on the framed photographs that now lined my walls, tangible evidence of my new identity. When everyone had been served cake, I stood to offer my own toast. "Thank you all for being here," I said, looking around at the circle of faces. Some new, some familiar, all dear to me in different ways. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined standing here, in my own home, surrounded by such wonderful people. Wonderful people. I've learned that it's never too late to discover who you truly are. My friends raised their glasses with murmurs of agreement. Even Michael smiled, though something wistful flickered in his eyes. Only Yara remained stone-faced, her glass barely lifted. After cake, as conversations formed and reformed around the room, Yara approached me near the kitchen. "So, this is your new life?" she said, gesturing vaguely at the apartment. "All alone." "I'm not alone," I corrected her. "I'm independent. There's a difference." She gave a small, dismissive laugh. "At your age, isn't it the same thing?" The comment was so strikingly similar to her cruel birthday toast a year ago, yet now it held no power to wound me. "No, Yara," I said calmly. "Being alone is what I felt sitting at my own birthday dinner, while my family laughed at the idea of me being just a memory. This," I gestured to my home, my friends, my photographs. "This is being complete." Her smile faltered, uncertainty flickering across her perfect features. I continued, my voice gentle but firm. A year ago, you thought I was finished, ready for the shelf or the nursing home? But look around, Yara. I'm just getting started. Before she could respond, Tyler bounded over, excitement lighting his face. Grandma, David says you might be able to photograph his daughter's wedding next spring. Is that true? I smiled at my grandson, now taller than me, and showing signs of the thoughtful man he might become. Yes, we've been discussing it. David's been very supportive of my work. Yara's eyes widened. You're doing professional photography now? Semi-professional, I clarified. I'm still learning, but yes, I've been paid for my work. Something shifted in her expression, a reluctant reassessment. For perhaps the first time, she was seeing me as a person in my own right, not just an extension of her husband's family, or a convenient resource. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Michael approached me with a hesitant smile. This was nice, Mom. Different, but nice. He paused, then added awkwardly, I'm proud of you. The words warmed me, though I no longer needed his approval the way I once had. Thank you, Michael. That means a lot. After everyone had gone, I stood on my balcony watching the city lights, a glass of champagne in hand. The night air was cool against my skin, carrying the crisp promise of autumn. I thought about the journey of the past year, from the humiliation of that birthday dinner to the quiet triumph of tonight's celebration, from invisibility to recognition, from obligation to choice. Yara's toast had been cruelly accurate in one sense. The woman I was then truly had become just a memory. But in her place stood someone stronger, someone who had refused to be diminished by others' limited expectations. I raised my glass to the night sky, to the stars that had guided sailors for millennia, to the vast universe that held endless possibilities, even at 71. To the last laugh, I whispered, and drank deeply. My story wasn't ending. It was just beginning to be told in my own voice, finally loud enough to hear. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until